Today we're going to be ranking the Halloween spin-offs based off of big animated movies. Yes, the spin-off series is back with a little twist. Now, when we refer to Halloween spin-offs, I do want to clarify, I mean major post-2000s 3D animated movies, because we need to draw a line somewhere. As we'll see, it still happens every now and again, but there was a period of time where many major CG animated franchises needed some kind of holiday special. And obviously most of these are Christmas specials. We'll cover those in a couple of months. But many of these franchises have dabbled in the Halloween special as well. And for a while, it just seemed like a thing that big animation studios did. You've got what I like to call the big guns in the form of Toy Story and Shrek. Shrek actually having a few different ones. But then you have a few completely rogue ones in there as well. So I thought it was worth diving into them and rank what I think a good Halloween special or short should be. My criteria generally being a fun extension of the main movie's world, which also offers that extra little bit of kid-friendly spookiness all good Halloween media really should have. There's also some franchises I'm surprised didn't have one. For one, there's no Ice Age A Mammoth Halloween. A Blessing as A Mammoth Christmas is perhaps one of the most baffling specials out there. And then with Hotel Transylvania, well, I guess the main movies kind of covered it. And just to re-emphasize, this is just for spin-off shorts and specials of other major CG animated movies. Do you have any idea how much Scooby-Doo stuff I am protecting myself with from those rules? Plus, there are some other grey areas like DreamWorks properties that have TV series with spooky episodes like Captain Underpants, which I just don't have time to comb through. I'm sure I've missed some, which inevitably will get listed in the comments. Something to loop back to next year, I guess. But here's the ones I could immediately find, ranked from worst to best. And prepare yourselves, because 4 of them are Shrek entries. And so we begin with the terrible Smurfs, The Legend of Smurfy Hollow. I'm sorry to bash on the Smurfs when they've had such a rough year as it is. Right up to Nickelodeon's disastrous Influencer Smurf removed reboot of this year, the Smurfs have never really had a great time on the big screen, have they? But let's go back a bit to at least when it was being done by Sony Animation overseeing the franchise. With Spider-Verse and K-pop demon hunters feeding into their mission to become the new Pixar, we may well forget that there was a time when Sony Animation was the bin bag of animation studios. But going back to this time, Smurfette was less Rihanna and more Katy Perry. Although, not in the case of this special, as they decided to not jump for her salary for this one. And so, for the Smurfs Halloween special, they went with a Smurfs version of Sleepy Hollow. And I'm sure we could agree that that's a natural fit with the Headless Horseman in the Smurfs. But they can't just put those two names together. They've got to fit the word Smurf in there as if it's a pun somehow and not just crowbarring it in. Alas, the Legend of Smurfy Hollow instead. With a story equally as imaginative as we follow 3 of the Smurfs going on the classic ghosts aren't real debate, a line of discussion that inevitably doesn't pan out well for them. But then something remarkable happens. This short does something I like. As despite how this thing was packaged, the ugly 3D Smurfs were merely an introductory tool to cut to genuinely well done 2D animation. If anything, it's a really solid homage to classic Smurfs cartoons, much more than any of the movies from the past 14 years anyway. The story itself is fine, not much to write home about. You have Brainy Smurf scare everyone from taking berries from his hotspot by telling them a scary story, which could have been anything, but clearly the mandate was to get the Headless Horseman in there. Gutsy Smurf catches him out, does the old give him a piece of his own medicine shtick and scaring him away, only for the horseman to turn out to be real. It's the Halloween special formula that millions of others have followed, only this time with the Gargamel kidnaps a Smurf formula thrown in there too. 2 done to their formulas for the price of 1. What a deal, what a bargain. And to those of you thinking, the Headless Horseman doesn't fit into the world of the Smurfs, don't you worry. Right at the very end, they completely undo that reveal, with the Headless Horseman actually being a goat that was transformed by Papa Smurf. That guy's power levels are the scariest thing to be seen here, if anything. Not amazing, but decent enough fun with some solid enough animation. And we get Hank Azaria voicing an animated version of Gargamel, which is pretty cool considering he's famously also a professional voice actor for a particular popular series. And no, I haven't included the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror specials on the list, just because The Simpsons is about to extend into becoming a movie franchise come 2027. Unironically, probably one of my favorite of any Smurf medium, and yet, it's still at the bottom of this list. I guess there's no disaster Halloween specials in animation, but that doesn't mean we've exactly found cinema either. As following that, we have The Bad Guys Haunted Heist. It's okay. It is a passable extension of The Bad Guys, which thankfully isn't also an applicable description of The Bad Guys too, so that's good. But anyway, this one, it just does what it says on the tin. The bad guys go to do a heist in a haunted house, and they get spooked by it. That's kind of it. The animation itself is pretty on par with the theatrical movies, except flat. You can tell there's a slight drop in budget, but style-wise, it's pretty on point. It's fine. But when the main movies are so good, it really shows when the holiday specials are just one note. And yes, specials is sequel because they've also got a Christmas one as well. And if there weren't the others on this showing that you can do a whole lot better, then I'd probably put this one higher. The Bad Guys is becoming one of my favorite franchises on this list, yet its Halloween special I've just got all the way down here. It's a real shame. It's definitely the one with the most baffling shift in quality between its main entries and its specials. Decent for kids, their target audience after all, but not great. Next, on to Shrek 4D, or The Ghost of Lord Farquaad. Oh boy, now this is definitely the weirdest entry on this list. The big thing being that originally it was a ride, and its links to Halloween actually came later. So in many ways, maybe it's unfair to compare to stuff that was actually made for the small screen. But it was later included in the DreamWorks' Spooky Tales release, and effectively got repackaged for Halloween, leaving us with 4 Halloween spin-offs out of Shrek. As you can gather, I much prefer the one that was actually made as a Halloween special, rather than just watching this ride's projection on a TV, but it's good to acknowledge that both exist. Particularly as 3 of them feature an undead Lord Farquaad. They can't get enough of that guy. In the actual Halloween special, this proves to just be a prank. But as you'll guess by its spooky rebrand as The Ghost of Lord Farquaad, he's an actual ghost in this one. Which gets even more canonically weird when you realize that this real undead Farquaad comes earlier in the timeline. Because Shrek 4D, which opened in 2003, is set en route to Shrek and Fiona's honeymoon, effectively being a connective midpoint between the first 2 movies. Which, considering that Shrek 2 was in production at the time, I think it's pretty cool that they used the ride to set up the next movie. But considering this movie has Farquaad's ghost capture Fiona and then threaten to make Shrek a widow, it's kind of weird that in Scared Shrekless, Fiona and her babies decide to prank Shrek and Donkey by posing as the ghost that tried to kill her just years earlier. You know, very much not the thing they expect you to be breaking down in these specials. But I get it, it's all silly fun where that doesn't really matter, yet I'm pretty sure both projects were also included on the same DreamWorks Spooky Stories DVD release. So is it overanalyzing when it's literally packaged together? This 15-minute short is, again, fine. It's an interesting piece of Shrek media that I'm glad got preserved beyond the ride itself. I wish that happened more often, preserved ride stories. Because whilst clearly designed for a ride, this is a 15-minute animation that DreamWorks had to make specially. And whilst this is 2003's version of not movie quality animation, you can tell that they considered the fact that this was gonna be commissioned specifically for a big screen. And the results are decent enough. It's very much a greatest hits of action set pieces from the first movie, because presumably that's what Universal Studios asked for. And as simple as the story is, you have to give them credit for creating a narrative to loosely justify revisiting these elements of the movie, rather than just a heightened replay of it. There's a couple decent gags in there, particularly from Eddie Murphy as Donkey, who still gives it his all, which you can't exactly say for everyone. Like, you could tell that Mike Myers was doing a cash and dash on the voice work. After calling her ogre form hideous before he got chomped, his plan now is to have Fiona unalived so she can rule the underworld with him. Sure. Leaving us to have what often happens with Fiona, and that is the typical damsel kidnapping followed by Fiona getting herself out of it, yet Shrek still has to save her. That's all there is to it, really. As for the ride, nothing lasts forever, and I'm sure no one's surprised to hear that it got replaced by Illumination's Villain Con Minion Blast. And speaking of Illumination, Sing Thriller. Yeah, so I've gone higher with this Sing one than maybe some of you may have expected. I'm surprised. Not a big fan of the main movies. I find this franchise to be as conceptually weird as Pixar's Cars. Doing a talent show type story with animals who just act like humans, but without the conceptual backbone of Zootropolis. You know, I just don't really understand it. Yet, in a world where this now exists as an actually successful flagship Illumination franchise, where you have a bunch of creative people who just have to work with it, you get fun stuff like this sometimes. And yeah, it's literally just Thriller with the Sings characters. You get the great vocals the movies are known for. Wow, it's good singing, but it's actually a gorilla doing it. And the animated choreography is pleasing to watch. That's definitely the big win for this. It's crazy how accurate the dancing is, considering they had to actually animate it, you know? And that's the thing. If they didn't have the voice cast come back to sing, there'd be no point in this. It's good animation with a thin idea, which I think is just a lot of Illumination in a nutshell. But it's definitely a much more lightened up version of Thriller than the version we're going to be looking at next. Instead of everyone turning into zombie ghoul versions of themselves, we instead just have a spinny eye situation after they've been infected by some ooze? With the classic Thriller music video twist particularly, they of course can't go the jump scare ghoul moment. So instead you have the koala paddle off in a boat that then gets slammed by a kraken. Just to make it more palatable for the kiddies, you know. But then they do save it with the gag at the end when the evil laugh's being done by this little snail dude. That's quite funny. I appreciate that. It's a harmless little thriller pastiche with these familiar characters. Simple, easy, palatable. Music, it's the easy one-track win. Anyway, on to something completely different. Shrek. Thriller. Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you haven't already for more spin-off content. We're bringing it all back. I'll find a new way to spin it together. Always fun to talk about the off-mainline stuff sometimes. But for now, let's get back to ranking all the horror ones. Yep, it's time for another Shrek one already. With a really unique USP among the Shrek media. And the better of the two Thriller parodies. It's once again just a redo of the Thriller video, but this time with Shrek characters. I didn't know that'd be a formula, but there you go. And this one, they actually made spooky for kids. I like that. Instead of just glowing eyes, you have genuinely ghoulish versions of the characters, including Donkey giving us a preview of his Shrek 5 design. Obviously, I also just prefer Shrek, but also the Shrekisms that they add to it just are more interesting. For one, having the Pied Piper with his different pipe settings being the cause of all the characters doing the Thriller dance in the first place. And above all of that, Shrek just has more of an edge to its style that allows it to have that spookier feel. With ghoul versions of all of the characters, including Lord Farquaad. Yep, they literally resurrect the character again. In fact, the real gem of this short is that all of the Shrek villains are featured together. You have zombie versions of Lord Farquaad, Fairy Godmother, Charming, and Rumpelstiltskin, all stood together. Sure, they're just dancing zombies, so it's not like you have all the voice actors all together singing, but it's just a cool detail to have all these guys actually stood together. Plus, when Shrek wakes up in the cinema at the end, there's one more absolutely golden reference where Julia Andrews voiced Queen Lillian is on screen and dancing on the heels from The Sound of Music. Honestly, there's not a lot of it beyond that, but I must say that this has been the highlight of making this video, just discovering that this exists. And Sing may have it on the vocals, but Eddie Murphy's here and pretty good as well. It's time for Monsters vs. Aliens Mutant Pumpkins from Outer Space. Seems quite rogue that this now is the other DreamWorks Halloween special. There's actually also an additional short called Night of the Living Carrots on the DreamWorks Spooky Stories DVD, but we've already got living pumpkins in this one, so I don't know how different they can be exactly. To the task at hand, I'd call this a more successful extension to the main movie than the bad guys one, despite me preferring the bad guys main movies. It's interesting actually how much secondary media that Monsters vs. Aliens in particular has, considering only one movie was ever made. After a flying saucer seemingly empties its sewage onto a pumpkin farm, inevitably the pumpkins come to life. And from the first line, the unhinged dialogue from the movie is still very much intact.
Teenagers, You better not be in my field making out.
And my criteria for kid-friendly spookiness factor is also very much fulfilled in this opening scene. But when you go away from the mutant pumpkins themselves, it drastically switches to, let's check in with the main characters talking about the relevant holiday. Again, fun enough for the children that it was aimed for, as opposed to the 29-year-old YouTuber talking about it. But not quite reaching the higher end of this list, which managed to do a little bit more than that. Whilst also, we've been talking negative for quite a while now. Turns out Halloween specials are typically not that great. Now that's not to say that there's not been some fun details to be had in this though. Like Dr. Cockroach's childhood flashbacks to him trick-or-treating when he was still a human, where they chose to have his human face obscured by a large bug mask. That's pretty clever. It's a fun enough plot with the mutant pumpkins tricking people to buy them, whilst also the monsters going on an undercover mission makes sense on a day where everyone's dressed as a monster. There's also this crossover pleasing joke.
Oh my gosh, it's Shrek!
We don't see much overlap with these franchises, so it seemed worth mentioning. And as the pumpkins get bigger, the big action sequences are just unhinged, eventually forming one horrific super pumpkin. A final Power Rangers type battle occurs, they get all the kids to help them out, too many sweets overwhelm the pumpkin to make one slimy explosion, kids eat all of the sweets that's released from its corpse, sorted. Kid-pleasing Halloween special. Stamped and done. There's at the very least more substance than just an animated version of the Thriller video that convincingly does expand the world of the movie. We're making incremental progress. So let's move on to The Pig Who Cried Werewolf. Yes, the three little pigs from Shrek got their own short. And yes, it is them with their German accents talking through the whole thing. Which is a bit much, but overall, it's actually pretty solid. Of course, you have the obvious Boy That Cried Wolf comparison, but it also has an air of Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window in there as well. It's kind of weird it's not part of the main Shrek specials that we're getting to in a bit, as it seems to fit the other stories featured. Maybe this was just one they came up with in the writer's room for that, and then just made it its own short. I mean, it actually seems to be a prequel of sorts, recounting the first time the pigs met the wolf. And there's some really cool creative choices in this one, like a cutout animation that pops up in the first scene where they're going through the nursery rhymes, and I like the idea that their whole neighborhood's just nursery rhyme characters. And as we get into the main plot of one of the pigs being paranoid around the wolf, I absolutely love the twist on it. Because of course, how can they be the werewolf of the title when they've clearly also been a wolf by day? Well, what if the reason they're always dressed in a nightie by day is that they transform into a psychotic woman who wants to cook them? Ending with the pigs running away, going wee wee wee, and you get the tone of this short. It is a fun and straightforward idea, actually executed really, really well. Simple, but it hits the mark. Moving on, we have Mater and the Ghost Light. Yeah, I'm putting the Pixar ones high. They have better short film game than any other animation mainline studio, even with some of the early Cars ones. Now, some are gonna challenge this one's place on the list. It is not a full blast Halloween special like the others. However, it was originally released on October 25th, 2006. So clearly spooky season had been consciously taken into account here. So I'm counting it, alright? Now generally, I'm not a huge fan of the Mater character. I think Cars 2 played a big part in that, as it did for many, which is why they kinda treated him in Cars 3 like Star Wars treated Jar Jar Binks in the later two prequels. But to be fair, I never actually minded him too much in the first one. He's fine, you know, he played his part. So, why do I like the short film about him? Well, I think it succeeds in that core belief I have for Halloween media. It is a harmless extension of the main movie, literally extending from something that was mentioned in the movie itself.
The ghost light!
Which genuinely pulls off that spooky atmosphere you get from the better end of Scooby-Doo content. They genuinely produce a sense of tension in this. Not to mention a big spooky twist at the end. I still remember that shot of the giant banshee behind Mater. A banshee that, lest we forget, got his own playset just from this 10-second appearance in the bonus short film on the DVD release. Capitalism is the real value of the Cars franchise for Disney. It also plays a lot more like a fun Warner Brothers cartoon than it does within the Cars universe. I can see why Cars Toon became a thing after this. Well, that was mainly once again for toys, but you can see how the journey at least started here. It's a solid short film that does everything you want from a spooky spin-off of the main movie. So very, very nice. Scared Shrekless. Here's the other Shrek one, and notably, The one that was actually made to be a Halloween special. We finally got there. Just like you had Shrek the Halls following the release of the third movie, this one came out October 2010 following Shrek Forever After. And this one escalates the format of that Christmas special. That being characters marking the spooky season together, which becomes a segue to introduce some shorts featuring the characters. And whereas Shrek the Halls had these as quicker cutaways from the overarching story of the special, here it very much is the overarching story, if you can call it that. It's just there to glue the three shorts together. And honestly, I don't hate that at all. If anything, I'm not so bothered about said storyline stitching them together, but the shorts do admittedly work better for having it there. The shorts are legitimately funny ideas, which matches the humor of the mainline movies, and uses the fact that this is a Shrek television special to do something different. Taking the characters and ideas to a wackier place that wouldn't work as a Shrek feature film. And whereas a lot of these Halloween specials play younger, I'd say this one has the best value for something for the adults appeal. I mean, even calling it Scared Shrekless is already pushing it a bit, because all of the shorts are based on famous horror movies, and I'll see if you can guess what they are. You've got The Bride of Gingy, Boots Motel, and prepare yourselves, The Shreksicist. For those who don't get it, they are fun parodies of The Bride of Frankenstein, Bates Motel from Psycho, and do I even need to explain the last one? I hope not. But anyway, all of them are pretty fun ideas. You've got The Bride of Gingy, where his girlfriend dumps him, so he gets the Muffin Man to make him a new one, kind of following the Frankenstein parallels from Shrek 2. Yet here, the scary element comes in from her becoming the obsessive, clingy girlfriend, which, sure, clearly some dudes wrote this one. But then he kicks her into a pool of butter, which is pretty dark. Gingy murders now. But it doesn't end there, as then all of the batter morphs into horrifying zombie versions of her in a sequence that I think would genuinely scare kids. All these gingerbread zombies with iced-on faces smashing through windows. It goes full-on Night of the Living Dead, and I'm here for it. So that's a solid one. Then you have Boots Motel, which is particularly fun in how Donkey and Puss keep changing the story as they argue over it. Generally, considering the main element is Puss and Donkey arguing over the story, this is a more pedestrian retelling of Psycho, shower scene with intense music on full display. Though Puss's fur replacing the blood going down the plug hole was a fun touch. And finally, The Shreksicist, which is legitimately probably the best one, and not just the best name, has, instead of a vicar coming in to help a family with their possessed child, this story has instead Shrek coming to help Geppetto with a seemingly possessed Pinocchio. Using all the familiar tropes of this version of Pinocchio, having the puppet strings lift him off the bed being a particular highlight. I am about to spoil the twist here, so skip ahead if you want to check it out yourself, but the end reveal is the icing on the cake. Because thankfully, the voices in Pinocchio's head aren't in fact the devil, they are inevitably just his old conscious Jiminy Cricket. Which made me realize that this was his first Shrek universe appearance, and not Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, where he looks very different. It's kind of the same with Rumpelstiltskin. But in fairness, he's never called Jiminy in that one, and maybe the world of Shrek just has a network of crickets being people's conscience. So there you go, 3 solid Shrek shorts and 1 pretty decent spooky special. Certainly stronger than Shrek 4D, and being later on, the animation is of course stronger in this one too. In fact, there's only one other Halloween spin-off left that tops it for me, and it's the only one we've actually done a full extension on before on the channel, and that is Toy Story of Terror. Of course, Pixar topped the spooky tree on this list for me. What I really like about these Toy Story specials is that they fit so seamlessly into the main series, whilst totally working as their own self-contained stories as well. They are legitimately solid mini entries into the franchise, with full budget animation that matches the Pixar features. The plot of this 30-minute special is actually well structured with a fleshed out story and a character arc for Jessie too. And I think that's what separates this from the Shrek ones, for example, where the Shrek characters are just thrown into a spooky scenario for Halloween. In this case, instead of Halloween, this short is themed around scary movies and scary movie tropes. Hilariously pointed out by the hedgehog thespian Mr. Pricklepants, providing some fourth wall humor for the adults, while softly introducing horror tropes for kids. Right down to the monster of this special being a well-kept mystery. Like, I genuinely couldn't work out what was going on when watching it for the first time. Going from that initial mystery monster to the gecko reveal and then tying it all into a Toy Story relevant plot. With the eBay steal and seller character, you eventually have an up-to-date continuation of Toy Story 2's plot and themes, particularly putting focus on Jessie and her trauma coming back from that movie too, literally putting her back in the box to overcome it. It's probably the only example on this list where scary elements aren't just played for humor. Thematically, Toy Story of Terror, outside of the more obvious horror pastiches, is about Jessie facing her actual fear. And this is what I mean. This is not bonus content. This is a legitimate continuation of the series. You also just have solid character additions, like Combat Carl getting some love after Sid blew one of them up in the first movie, as well as the literally more minor characters in the form of the small collectible toys. This was a special that was treated like anything that carries the Toy Story name, and was not made as an extended spooky cartoon, but a legitimate continuation of the series. And for those reasons, I consider it easily the very best on this list. And that is the full listing of what I assume is pretty much all, or at least most, of the Halloween special spin-offs of 3D CG animated movies post-2000. Hopefully I've worked out a better title by the time you see it. Always interesting to see how different teams and characters deal with the similar kind of prompt. And for better or for worse, it was still a pretty interesting time to delve through it all. For now though, I'd best finally end it off there. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this little spin-off episode. Were there any Halloween specials I missed? How would you rank these shorts if you had to? Let me know any suggestions of future spin-off content to make. Yes, we'll probably be back for Christmas. And for now, I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!